Welcome to Stories with Sissy. Today I'm taking you all the way back as we reminisce on one of the greatest horror films of our time that just so happens to be considered a cursed movie set. What curse, you ask? Well, the curse of the Omen, of course. Let's begin by talking about the birth of what is now called the Omen. The Omen movie came to fruition when a regular guy named Bob Munger was suddenly struck with the concept of the Antichrist being here on Earth, waiting stealthily to make an appearance and wreak havoc. But in present time, the Antichrist is just a little boy. Bob makes a few calls and gets in touch with producer Harvey Bernard. They meet, discuss the idea, and production gets underway. The upcoming film piqued the interest of big screen actor Gregory Peck. But as everything was coming to fruition, the creator of the concept, Bob Munger, started to have some doubts about creating the film due to worries about the devil himself taking issue with the Hollywood movie unmasking his cloak of invisibility. I mean, let's be honest. If you're the devil, the last thing you want is a big Hollywood production showing all your tricks and putting all your cards on the table. Am I right? So, in the summer of 1975, June of 1975 to be exact, just 3 months before filming was set to begin, the first signs of tragedy were already beginning to show. The main star of the film, Gregory Peck, would experience the first of the long line of tragedies to be linked with the film. His own son, Jonathan Peck, shot and killed himself. Just a few months later, in the fall of 1975, a grief-stricken Gregory Peck boarded a plane on its way from New York to London, and bizarrely, the plane suffered a direct lightning strike, causing an engine fire mid-air. Producer of the film Mace Newfield was scheduled to take the same exact flight to London shortly thereafter. A pilot himself, he convinced himself that it was just bad luck, and with his knowledge of planes, he knew that typically the most a plane would suffer after being struck by lightning is a power failure, but hardly ever a crash. During his own flight from New York to London, the plane flew through a thunderstorm, and his flight was also hit by lightning. So the director of the film, Richard Donner, planned to start filming with a few aerial shots from above London. The production crew rented a plane, and the rental airline offered them a better discounted deal if they agreed to use another instead of the initial one they rented. Having a limited budget, they agreed, and the plane they planned to use to fly Gregory Peck and other members of the production crew was instead boarded with a group of Chinese businessmen. Upon takeoff, a flock of birds flew into the plane's engine, causing the plane to crash back down to the ground, hitting a station wagon. 6 people were killed in the accident, the occupants of the car, and also the wife and children of one of the airfield's pilots. Coincidentally, or mysteriously, essential safety equipment that could have scared off the birds was turned off. If not for the last-minute switch, the Omen's cameraman, director, and producer would have been among those aboard the plane. That's a lot of really strange and unfortunate events. We're still in pre-production. But now, let's say it's about October 1975 when the entire cast and crew are united in Surrey for filming. They managed to get some pretty iconic scenes, however, not without tragic results. The graveyard scene was to involve a choreographed trained dog attack. The stunt double for David Warner, Terry Welsh, took one look at the trained Rottweilers and decided he needed additional padding. Excess padding and a thin but sturdy steel plate was added to the costuming for protection. Almost immediately after filming began, crew members noticed something had gone wrong. The dogs trained to bite the stuntman for the scene had actually penetrated every layer of additional protection. Production crew had a hard time getting the dogs to release their grips as they refused to obey the commands from their handler. Stuntman Terry Welsh actually passed out from the ordeal and was taken to the hospital in shock. The safari park baboon scene, in which a herd of baboons charge a parked car with Damien and his mother inside, the production crew employed the help of the animal park warden. This park warden was familiar with the different habits of animals and knew what would get the best reaction out of them for the scene. For the scene with the baboons, it was suggested that because the monkeys are so communal and protective of their young, if a baby baboon was placed in the car with the actors, it would ensure a riotous response from the baboons. The fury you see in the scene from the baboons is real, and the fear from the actors is very real. During the filming of this scene, the crew was assisted by a park ranger named Sidney Bamford. As it turned out, none of the following footage from this day would make the final edit, but the crew's cursed presence seemed to linger regardless. The day filming ended in the big cats section. Sidney Bamford was killed by a tiger. Sidney was said to have been standing between two enclosures, believing the tiger was safely enclosed on either side, but the tiger was actually in some trees above the cage overhead. When Sidney lifted his head into the exposed portion of the cage, the tiger lowered his mouth onto Sidney's head, piercing his skull and killing him. An article from the Courier-Journal published Thursday, November 6, 1975, titled, "Tiger Born in Captivity Kills Unarmed Ranger," reports on Sidney's death. The article states that Sidney attempted to ward off the tiger with a pole, while another ranger nearby was unable to fire at the tiger because of his distance. When the ranger was finally close enough to safely fire at the tiger, it was too late. Sidney's sudden and unlucky death is when the rumors of a curse really began to spread. So by this time, it appears that, honestly, no one's safe. Whether you're a part of the cast, the crew, an animal handler, a stunt double, everybody's kind of starting to see that there's something different about this film and the production surrounding it. Leading lady Lee Remick was no different. And about this time after Sidney's death, she's like, nope, to several things, several aspects of this movie. But specifically, there was an iconic scene in that movie, a fall over a second-story railing that was meant to be shot having Lee Remick essentially do her own controlled stunt. But because of all the mishaps occurring around the production, she refused to do the shoot. Well, she refused to shoot the scene as imagined by the director. They ended up rethinking the entire shot and coming up with a scene even more visually striking than the original idea. Honestly, I have to say, super smart for Lee Remick. I mean, sometimes you have to have your own back. And if something doesn't feel right in your gut, good for her for knowing how to say no. So I haven't really been doing this in chapters, but if I had to title this portion as anything, it would be called No Place Safe. So a Hilton hotel was bombed by the terrorist organization, the IRA. Executive producer Mace Newfield had just exited the hotel with his wife when the bomb was detonated. His wife thought that there was an earthquake happening in London. At this point, the cast and crew were on edge with suspicion and fear. NPR reports an IRA hotel bombing occurred on September 5th, 1975. This would present a timing issue if filming began in October of 1975, unless certain crew members were already stationed in London before leading characters flew in. Leading man Gregory Peck tried to keep everyone in good spirits amidst the seemingly horrible luck following the production. And on November 12, 1975, he invited the director and producer out to a reserved dinner at his favorite restaurant in the city, Scott's Seafood Restaurant. Unbelievably, the IRA struck again, bombing Scott's restaurant just before they could arrive for their reservation, they narrowly escaped death once again. A Wikipedia article confirms that Scott's Oyster Bar bombing occurred on 11/12/75. The attack was carried out with a shrapnel-based throw bomb that was tossed into the restaurant at around 2100 hours. The restaurant was said to have about 70 occupants at the time of the bombing and resulted in approximately 15 injuries and only one reported fatality, that of 59-year-old John Beatty. So even after all of the tragedy surrounding production and talk of a curse, the movie almost wasn't released. With only a $2 million budget, the movie was pandered to the executives at Fox, and after a fight to be taken seriously, Fox fronted $15 million to market the movie's release. So now, The Omen's set to be released on 6/3/1976, so June 3rd of 1976. But the head of the studio realized that if release could wait just 3 days later, it would be the perfect release date and garner major publicity for the film, having a release date of June 6, 1976. That's right, 6/6/76. The folks over at Fox certainly got their money back. I mean, they invested $15 million to make this movie happen and make it happen well. And they grossed over $60 million in the box office and made it one of the highest grossing films of 1976, if not the highest grossing film of 1976. So I'd say not bad for what they put in. Although, I don't know if it's a price well paid for all the tragedy involved. After the filming of The Omen, the stuntman for Lee Remick, Alf Joint, was injured on the set of the movie A Bridge Too Far. He was performing what should have been a fairly simple stunt for the experienced actor. He was to jump from the ledge of a building, about a 40-foot fall, and landing on either of two airbags. He leapt from the building awkwardly and landed between the two airbags, resulting in non-life-threatening injuries. However, his injuries did land him in an eerily similar condition to that of Lee Remick's character in The Omen, after suffering her fall. That's just really spooky to me, the idea that this is something you've done several times over. They have not one airbag, but two, and somehow you land in between them, and then you also land in the same condition of a character from The Omen, and you're on a different movie set. So a lot of this is just really too strange for coincidence. There's a pretty horrifying scene in the Omen movie where a truck carrying a sheet of glass slides off the truck, decapitating a man behind it. The special effects for the scene were engineered by crew member John Richardson with the assistance of Liz Moore. Liz Moore created the clay sculpture decapitated head used to perfect that scene. Just 2 months after the release of The Omen, on Friday, August 13th, 1976. Yes, it was a Friday the 13th. Richardson and Moore were headed to the city of Omen in the Netherlands when they were involved in a horrendous head-on collision en route. John Richardson was badly injured in the accident. However, Liz Moore was tragically decapitated. Well, that's it for all the information I have on the Curse of the Omen. I'm sure there's a lot more information out there, and if you find more, or you find even more cursed movie sets that you're interested in, be sure to let me know. I'm definitely open to that, and I'm totally fascinated by this topic. I will say that after knowing all this information about The Omen, the movie, it's kind of like it's gained a certain appeal for me, but it's also kind of lost it, because in a way I almost feel like even coming across the movie or watching it yourself, I almost feel a little bit cursed in a way. So it's definitely interesting. Maybe one of these days I'll muster up the courage to watch it again, knowing what I know now. I don't know when, but if I do so, I will let you all know, and I'll definitely check in to let you know that everything is still a-okay in life and all is well. But thanks for being here today. I hope you enjoyed this segment, and until next time.